Yeah. Hello, and welcome to Truth and Judgment. I'm just kidding, man. Hello, and welcome to Truth and Judgment.
Hello, and welcome to VNI Nation. It's been a long night. We've had a pretty in-depth conversation about a bunch of different topics like morality, generations and respect, and how you treating other people a certain way. And we kind of wanted to discuss this on camera. We've made several attempts already, but this is the final one for the night. So we'll see how this goes.
So, I mean, we were talking about the concept that people aren't motivated anymore. And it's not necessarily that they don't have the motivation to do something. It's more that they don't know how to prioritize anymore. And I mean, we've already talked about how that's kind of a fault with the education system, but it's also a fault with raising in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And I was telling you about, in the South, I've noticed that a lot of kids do what their parents want. And that's what's expected of them. They follow the path that their parents want for them. Well, you're going to be a lawyer. Okay, well, I guess I'm going to law school. Or they don't take the time to analyze themselves, and they end up in jobs that they hate, where they end up being burnt out because they hate what
Mm-hmm.
they do. And I mean, that causes the rise of depression because you hate your life. And that causes so many other issues. And with that being said, it's like I was saying, when I decided to stop going to school for cyber, because I personally did a bit of a self-evaluation, and while it's profitable, it's not something that I would want to do for a career. And it's not that I want to do something that's not a profitable career. I don't want to do a liberal arts degree or anything. I didn't want an office job where I'm going to be sitting behind a computer all the time. That's not the type of person I am. And I had to come to terms with that, because as a hobby, I like messing around with computers. But as a career, I realized that while it might be a cool skill to have, it's not something that I want to do as a career path. And so I started looking into trucking. And my dad told me that I'm reaching that age where I need to make decisions for myself. And I mean, obviously, I've been an adult for a while. I need to make decisions for myself. But he was talking more from a career point of view. I got to start deciding what kind of career path I want to take and what kind of thing I'm going to enjoy. And so he was like, you should do trucking. It's a short school, and it can be very profitable. And I was like, yeah, and I think it's something I would like to do, because I like to drive trucks and I like to see the world. But you have this comfort level. And my granddad was not supportive of it at all. He wanted me to do cyber, and he was all behind helping me do cyber. But then he was like, no, when I told him I was going to drop out and go to trucking school, he was like, you know what? I'm done giving you advice. I'm just going to watch you fail and get back up, because you're just like your dad. You're smart enough to do whatever you want, but you're too stupid to listen. And I was like, that's straight up disrespect.
Yeah.
And if it had been anybody else but my family, and specifically my granddad, I would have had words, probably more than a few that I would have regretted. And because respect is a two-way street, and a lot of the older generation don't seem to understand that, but the younger generation don't understand that either. Because
just in a different way.
In a different way. Because the older generation expects respect.
Yeah, they've lived a long time. They feel like they've earned it.
They deserve it. It's something they've earned by right of being.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what determines respect.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you have the younger generation who they want to be respected, but they're disrespectful too, but in a different way.
I definitely, we saw a lot of these problems in the Marine Corps as well, with the ranking system. The higher ranking people feel like they've earned the respect, or they deserve it just because of their rank, but they treat other people, like crap. They don't respect the younger individuals, even if what they say makes sense or they have good ideas. They're just like, you're straight up wrong.
Well, it's like when I went into my granddad's office, and I mean, when I decided to jump into trucking, it wasn't a on the spot of the moment decision like everyone thought. I don't talk to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't discuss my life and my plans with a lot of people. You, my wife, and maybe a couple other people that are directly in my day to day life
Yeah.
might be the exception.
Yeah. I think I could pinpoint like the point where you started thinking about it like seriously, because you would bring it up like casually in conversation. You were like, like truck drivers make a lot of money. Like you would say something about it every once in a
And that
while.
started out in July. That's before I even started school for cyber.
Yeah.
And then months in September, that's 2 months of time that I thought about this and researched. I was on trucker forums talking to actual truckers. And my granddad thought he knew better than people who had been doing the profession for years. That would be like me walking into his own tax firm. He owns his own company. He owns his own CPA firm. It'd be like me walking into his CPA firm and telling him how to be an accountant and telling him that being an accountant was dumb because of reasons, of whatever reasons it was, because it was nonsensical. It was unfounded. And he had a handful of experiences of owner operator truckers that he had dealt with that barely struggled to make ends meet. But I was on multiple trucker forums. There's plenty of advice out there if you know where to look, because it's the internet. But it also did push me out of my comfort zone, because I was like, I'm going out on a limb here, going out on my own. My decision to join the Marine Corps was fully supported by my family.
Mm-hmm.
So they were totally behind it. This is something that they're like, I don't know about that. That's not the best idea. I'm like, why is it not the best idea? And I talked with my grandmother about this too. And I was like, how is it not a good idea? I was like, hey, a CDL can be used anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a shortage of drivers. Pay's going up.
Yeah. Like how we mentioned in our Reform the School System video, where there are valuable skills in society that people just don't pursue. And now there's a shortage of it.
Yeah, and truck drivers is one of those. You've got guys that have been in the truck driving industry for 20, 30 plus years. And they're looking at retiring. They're looking at getting out. They're done. They've saved up their money. They're ready to retire.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have the replacements going into the field. And the problem with that is it's a hard job. It's rough. You're not home all the time. And if you have a wife and kids, it's even more difficult while you're on the road, because what if there's an emergency? What if all this goes on? You have so many variables in it, and it's rough. It's a different type of life. And you have to have a certain lifestyle to do it. And we haven't raised a generation that has a calling to it, like a lot of liberal arts degrees come out of our generation. A lot of liberals come out of our generation. A lot of sensitivity comes out of our generation.
Mm-hmm.
None of those things are compatible with trucking. I mean, I guess you could be liberal and be a trucker, but that's not very common, because it's a hard job. It's rough. It's manual labor. People don't like that. I mean, especially with what I plan on doing. I'm doing flatbed. I still secure all my loads. I'm still going to secure all my loads. I still have to tarp my loads if that's applicable, and I have to do manual labor on top of driving. And it's a hard job, because you're driving a 40-ton vehicle down a highway, and you've got the life of everyone around you, including yourself, is in your hands. A truck that large, there's people that would steer off the road to avoid hitting a car because they don't want that person to die, even though that person's at fault for what happened. And I mean, it's profitable in the sense that even if I choose to do something else, I still have my CDL. And if like a recession hits, they always need truck drivers. You always need truck drivers. Period. It's a skill that's always needed. Same as electricians, same as HVAC. I mean, there might be a recession that hits, and I might go decide to do something else, and then I lose my job because, like, let's say V&I Nation takes off the way we want it to. And then during the recession, we lose subscribers and patrons because they don't have the money to help us support our dream.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine. I don't have anything against that. But in that instance, I'm going to be real happy that I have my CDL, because I can go back on the road and I can get hired in any of the 50 states, because I can just go, well, I have a CDL, and there's probably about 1 million truck companies that need things done. Because, I mean, if you're wearing it, a truck brought it. period.
Yeah.
At some point, it was on a truck. So it's very profitable. And they don't understand that. And they're like, well, I mean, blah, 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 this, blah, blah, that. They try to tell me how to live my life.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people just let that happen. Like you said, we're dealing with a problem of dependency. We've created a generation that's dependent, not independent. And that's a problem. Like, millennials think it's acceptable that there's millennials that are in their late 20s and early 30s, hell, even early 20s, living with their parents still.
Mm-hmm.
It was very clear when I was either going to pay rent or I was going to get out of the house when I turned 18 because I was considered an adult. And that's fair, I think, because it teaches you a sense of responsibility.
Yeah.
And I mean, as we were just talking about him, motivational speaker. Yeah, but as he was saying, like, having a purpose and a sense of responsibility helps you grow up.
Shapiro.
No.
Denlock.
What? No, other one. Peterson. But he was saying, like, it's important for everyone to have a sense of purpose because that allows them to become competent. It allows them to... Learning responsibility is not a bad thing, and it's something that people shy away from. Because...
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, I'm responsible for my actions. They don't want to accept responsibility for their actions.
Yeah. On this topic, I had this situation not too long ago, actually, where my girlfriend at the time, she hit me up. She's like, "Hey, do you think that you would be able to, like, take care of this cat?" And of course, I don't like jump into anything right away. I always like, why is there a cat that I need to take care of? And so she started explaining, like, one of her friends, he's like, he lives in a house with like a couple roommates, and he has this cat, but he, everybody's trying to go home for the holidays, but there's no one left to take care of the cat because he's also leaving, and it's his cat, but he doesn't want to take care of the cat. He doesn't want to, like, take the cat with him.
And he doesn't want to pay for boarding.
Yeah, and he doesn't want to pay for that. And I told her that I would not take care of the cat because he needs to make a responsible decision. He needs to learn responsibility and take responsibility for his actions. And you know what ended up happening? He dropped the cat off behind a dumpster somewhere. And I stand by my decision.
No, that was a good decision to make.
Yeah. I don't feel bad about it at all. Because that was the decision that he made. Was it the right decision?
No.
No,
not at all. There's a million different things that he could have done. He could have given it up to a shelter. He could have found someone who wanted a cat and just given it away. I mean, there's plenty of options.
Yeah.
But he didn't want to accept responsibility for his decisions. And there's plenty of people that refuse to accept responsibility for their decisions. But yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Like, nobody wants to accept responsibility for their actions.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big problem with our generation and Gen Z, is that they don't want to accept responsibility, and that they don't want to, in order to take responsibility for their actions, they have to recognize that their actions have consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't want to think that the consequences of their actions relate to them. I read an article that there is a growing group of millennials that are making over $100,000 a year, 100 to 2,000, and they're still strapped for cash, is what it says. But they live a lavish lifestyle, and that's why they're strapped. They're not living within their means.
Mm-hmm.
They could live far more comfortably. Like, they won't be living lavishly, but like, they go travel to everywhere all the time.
Yeah.
And they get the premium avocado toast. They get the $4 Starbucks. And I mean, as Dan Locke says, the $4 Starbucks, saving that money is not going to make a big difference. But these big travels, living in a big house that you don't need,
yeah,
and all this other stuff, it's not that you don't need it. It's that if you don't have the means to pay for it without complaining, you should accept responsibility for that. You should be able to go, well, I have this budget. I mean, not even this budget. I have this income. But what of it do I actually want to spend? Because at that point, you have to make decisions. And if you're strapped for cash, maybe you should look at a smaller house. Maybe you should look at traveling less. And I get that, well, that doesn't make me happy. It's not always about happiness. Being responsible in itself can bring happiness because you feel good about being able to make your own decisions as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I haven't lived with my parents since I went and joined the Marine Corps, and I wouldn't live with them now because I have to accept responsibility for the actions that I've done, even if they're not necessarily my fault, even if they were outside of my control. My decisions led to that point. And because my decisions led to that point, I have to accept responsibility.
Yeah. I'll bring it up again. My last girlfriend, she made it a point. She was like, why don't you give money to homeless people? I'm like, 1, I don't carry cash. 2, I don't feel like I should give them my cash. Like, I said it in more details than that, but that's basically what it boils down to. They made decisions in their life that led them up to that point.
Well, another interesting thing about the homeless thing is that I was talking to a guy. There's a guy in my trucking class who used to be homeless. And he was saying that when he was homeless, people would give him money. But it gave him like a sense of, it didn't motivate him, essentially. It kind of gave him a sense of complacency. Like, why should I try? Like, why should I try to get my life back in order if I can just stand out here on the corner and make enough money to eat and put a roof over my head? Like, why bother? And it's like, if I'm gonna help a homeless person, it's gonna be very specific. Like,
they're offering a service or something.
Like offering a service, or even like, where's a homeless guy? Like, anything helps. Like, you can see it countless times. Like, you can offer them food, and they'll be like, I don't want food. Sorry. It's like, well, anything helps, bro. That's literally what your sign says. Or there's also some that's like looking for a job. I'm not looking for a handout. And I respect those dudes. I'll help them out. Like, and I understand it's hard to get a job when you're homeless because, like, you don't have the money for a suit. You don't have the money to go to interviews. You don't have the money for transportation. And you're grimy. You don't take showers because you don't have the availability for them. But I mean, all it takes is like, hey, man, how about this? You say anything helps? I'll get you a job interview. And they'll be like, no, I don't, I'm good. And you're like, really? You're good? Living out here on the street? That's cool to you? That's what you want to do? And they'll be like, yeah.
Some people don't want to be helped.
Yeah, some people refuse to be helped.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes down to, you need to learn how to help yourself. There's plenty of people who have been homeless and then have clawed their way up back to being in a stable life with a stable income and with a house and no longer homeless and all this. And it's because of personal choices. They took responsibility for their actions and then moved to fix the problems. And I mean, that's a big thing with all of these motivational speakers. You have all these millennials and boomer, like every generation goes to these motivational speakers and they'll listen and they'll go, okay, yeah, I agree with that. But they won't act on it. And I mean, we were talking about that earlier too. It's like, we were listening to John Peterson and we were listening to Shapiro. We were listening to Dan Locke, and we're like, man, we really agree with this, but what are we really doing to act on those agreeances?
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing that will improve us? And the answer is we haven't done much. We're trying, but we're working in small steps. And sometimes we're not moving. I mean, we've also admitted that. We have procrastination problems, and sometimes we misprioritize. Like, I'm just going to watch TV instead.
I definitely, I'm one of those people, I can recognize some problems in my life, but some things I'm just, not willing to, put away or change that. And that's something that I need to get better at. I need to work towards. If it's going to make a positive difference in my life, then I should do that. But I don't feel the need to do that at this point in time.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Procrastination is a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
You have I can do it later. I can always do it later.
Yeah.
You can always do it later.
Always do it later. Yeah.
But if it benefits you, why should you wait? Why should you wait to do something that's going to benefit you in the long run?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's going to take you out of that comfort zone. It's going to take you out of that range that you're comfortable being in. So going out of your range is uncomfortable. People don't like it. But in order to change, you have to go outside of that norm that you're used to.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a very large scale problem with a lot of solutions that nobody wants to actually commit to.
Yeah. And it's not just like you or me. It's an entire generation of people that have like the same problems with drive and motivation and making impactful decisions in their lives.
Well, it's like Peterson said. It was like, when you do something, you need to have that genuine question. You don't just need to think it like, well, like for instance, if I wanted to clean this hotel room, like let's say this is my house and I want to clean it up, I shouldn't sit there and go, I should really clean.
Mm-hmm.
That's not really committed. I got to ask myself, what can I do right now to make this better? And then I have to put it inside of a realistic time frame. So like if this place was trashed, I obviously don't want to spend the next 6 hours cleaning up the entire place. But I could also sit there and go, you know what? Instead of watching this TV show right now, what could I do in 30 minutes to make it better around here? And if you did that every day and you maybe increased your time some days, decreased it other days, what you were comfortable with, and instead of procrastinating, acted on that. What can I do? And the moment things start popping out, you just start working at it. Like, man, what could I do to make this place better? You know what?
I could clean off that desk.
I could clean off that desk. I could clean up that clutter. I could organize those cards. I could do all these different things that are going to improve the status of the world around me, something that I can control. But a lot of people don't want to because they're like, I just don't want to. It's too much work.
Yeah, I know when we lived together, like we were really bad at organizing cards and then just like not utilizing that organization at all. It did not help us one bit.
We'd organize it and then just take everything back apart.
Yeah, we spent so much time organizing cards in like very specific ways and like everything. And then you're like, we need to find some cards for this deck and just tear apart our entire
just
collection.
Dump out the whole box.
Tear apart the entire collection. It's somewhere in that box. All right, cool. Taking out piles of cards, going through them, and now they're completely disorganized.
And it gets even worse when we're both working on different decks. So now, red pile here, black pile here, multicolored pile here.
Let me see that pile over there. I need that.
But we were terrible about it. But we've gotten better about it, too.
Yeah.
It's taken time, though. And it's come... We have a kind of basic understanding about the type of people we are. And that's because we're also critical of each other. We have our self-reflection, but we also acknowledge, like, dude, you were being a fucking lazy sack of shit right now.
Yeah, like we're pretty similar in a lot of areas, and that helps us be very critical of each other.
And that helps us get each other off each other's ass, too. Like, we talked about doing this channel
for a long time.
Wait till you hear the year that we discuss this channel. Ready? 2015. When did we start it? When we both said, fuck it, let's do it.
Fuck it, let's do it. I remember designing this logo, but it was long before we ever made our first video.
No, I think if we looked at the creation of our channel, we would still be probably solid 2 months away from where we actually came up with the concept.
Mm-hmm.
But then we evaluated ourselves and we were like, we're procrastinators. We have to put ourselves in a situation where we're not allowed to procrastinate anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one way that we chose to start improving ourselves. And we're still procrastinators, but we've gotten a little bit better about it because in other areas of our life, we can't procrastinate. We have to get that video out. And we, of course, have our slip-ups. We're human.
Yeah.
But even with those said slip-ups, we still push out the content. But at the same time, we've kind of realized a mistake with that. So, more next time on Deep Thoughts.
Deep Thoughts.
Thank you, and goodbye.